Welcome in, everybody, to Fantasy Pros. This is the Fantasy Football Podcast, and it's me, Joey P. Joe Pizzapia. That's Mike Tagliere. That's Kyle Yates, and it's you. And we're talking rookie draft today. That's right. We're going to have a little fun. Finally, the pieces have landed. Now we want to see what a real mock draft looks like for a Superflex Dynasty League for these first-year players. So we're going to go back to back here. We've already had some words thrown, some jabs thrown, some tears have been shed here before the show about who's picking where and what's going on. So this should be a lively one today. So boys, now that we finally got everything kind of settled in, we know the players, we know the systems, we at least have some inklings and some ideas. Tags, I know you already said, well, I don't know what my real team looks like. How can I draft this? That's loser talk. That's what I say. That's loser talk. You get in there and you draft.
No, it's not true. In a Superflex league, you have to understand your roster, the strengths and weaknesses, what you do with your roster. It does depend. Now, if we're going to do this as like a startup, like literally we have no one on our rosters, we're doing a rookie draft, and then we're going to do a dynasty startup, I'll approach it that way, and we'll do it like that. So, Yates has already gotten on my bad side today. I'm sure I'm going to snap at him a couple times. He's probably going to just call me a baby or something like that. But I don't know. It's always nice talking with you guys.
I gotta say, Yates, I mean, the word mock is in here, right? So I just want to suspend the window of disbelief. Let's pretend your roster is just good and you're just kind of putting yourself out there. I don't understand, like, why. I get it, like, Tags is playing politician a little bit here, but I think it's kind of crazy. Like, you know, what does my team look like? I mean,
he's already covering. He's already covering for his draft because he knows it's going to be so bad already. He's just already just kind of putting that out there, saying that, man, he's kind of giving himself an out. He's giving himself excuses.
What's more abundant, wide receivers for the Giants or Tags excuses today?
I will still go with wide receivers for the Giants there.
All right, fair enough. All right, so we're going to get into this again today. What we're doing is we're going to do our best we can, right, Tags? We're going to do the best we can here with the situation. It's a Superflex league here. This is the first-year player draft just to set the stage once again. So you'll see the quarterbacks valued maybe a little bit higher than you'll see in the regular old, non-Superflex formats for Dynasty. But we're just trying to give everybody an idea of how we see the board and, most importantly, how we see these players now that they have homes, which is a very important thing. That's what we want to have. Now, before we kick things off here with the draft, I want to remind everybody, thanks to our friends at Pristine Auction, we are giving away a Calvin Ridley autographed jersey. So if you want in on that, go to www.fantasypros.com/contest. Again, that's fantasypros.com/contest. All you got to do is just write a review of the show. Tags is great. Yates is great. I tolerate Joe Pizzapia. That's perfectly fine. You take a screenshot of that on Apple podcast or on Castbox. You go over to fantasypros.com/contest. You upload that, you fill out the form, and bang, you are entered to win a Calvin Ridley autographed jersey. Again, that's thanks to pristineauction.com. And once you are entered once, you're entered for the rest of the entire year. So go ahead, you're listening to the show anyway, you might as well get something good out of it. And also, we got a couple sponsors we'll get to later, but I want to jump in to the draft. So, the order, we're going to go round and round. Where it lands, nobody knows. So no, we're going to have this order here, and it's going to start with the 1-1, and it's me! And it's me in the Superflex, which is so nice that I'm the one. I never get the one pick. So normally this is going to go poorly when I get the one pick. If last year's any indication, I'm sorry to everyone else who had CMC along with me. It was a bad scene last year for all my one picks, but it's a new year. Yes, it is. So I'm going to start things off here in the Superflex with the franchise, Trevor Lawrence. That's right. I'm just not overthinking this. It's very simple. Give me Trevor Lawrence. I have some questions about Urban Meyer. I have some questions about what this offense is going to look like. But I'm also cautiously optimistic because I am looking forward to him coming into a situation where the NFL is set up for quarterback success. The offensive line, as Tags and I were talking about earlier in the week, is kind of middling. It's not the worst. It's not the best. And he's got some weapons around him, including a familiar weapon behind him in that running back in Travis Etienne. So give me Lawrence 1-1. This is very easy. Thank you. Thank you, Yates, for making it easy for me. Tags, you're up next.
Yep. Since we declare that this is the startup rookie draft with a startup actual draft after this, Superflex is very, very important. And because of that, I'm going to piss off Yates with this pick. And I'm going to take Trey Lance with the 102 pick in a Superflex format because, some quarterbacks like Zach Wilson, we are worried about him translating in terms of the projections we have. Justin Fields, I'm worried about Matt Nagy and the play calling. The Bears systematically as a franchise, never a good thing. So you go Trey Lance and you say, All right, they gave up 3 first-round picks to get this guy. He is legitimately going to be given every single chance in the book to succeed. There is no chance they move on from him, even if he struggles out of the gate. They're sticking with him for a long time. They have to, and it's Kyle Shanahan. He's going to make it work. In a super flex, quarterback's extremely valuable. This would allow me to attack, some other positions in the startup draft that we're going to do after this one, boys. So Trey Lance.
All right, there you go. You know what? I can't help but in a way think that Yates, you're still happy with this because you believe that you believe that Lance is the guy that goes second anyway. So even though Tags took him, you're just, I think, happier with the valuation, right?
Yeah, completely. And it's actually really frustrating at the same time because I had the 103 in one of my Dynasty rookie drafts that just completed, and I wasn't able to get Lance there either. So I've spent all off season, even into the summer of last year, talking about Trey Lance, and I'm through 2 Dynasty rookie drafts so far, and I do not have him on any of my rosters. So got to fix that here at some point with the remainder of my rookie drafts. But yeah, this is kind of how I've seen it go so far in the 2 drafts that I've been in, and how I think it should go.
All right. Well, I mean, you basically have no one to blame but yourself. I mean, at the end of the day, you've hyped him so much, and
it's all on me, guys. Yep.
All right. So there enough. So now you are number 3 on the board. You're on the clock. So now that Lawrence and Lance are gone, where do you go next?
Yeah, completely. And with it being a super flex league, right, you've got to be able to look at the quarterback position here and look at the guys that you think can have that sky-high ceiling. And so while Trey Lance went off at the 102, I'm actually perfectly fine sitting here at the 103 and getting Justin Fields out of Chicago, right? And that just seems so weird to say now. It still hasn't set in that Justin Fields is in Chicago. But this offense, you talked about it, Tags, like there are some concerns. Like, do we fully trust Matt Nagy? No, not necessarily, but I fully trust Justin Fields. I had him as QB3 in this class. He shouldn't have fallen to the number 11 overall pick in the NFL draft. So for him to go off the board here, for me to get a rock-solid quarterback prospect here at the 103 to add to my dynasty roster, I'm perfectly happy with that.
Now, there's a lot of ways I can go with this next pick here. I've got my Trevor Lawrence here as Lawrence, Lance, and Fields go 3 in a row, and I don't know. I still have lots of questions about Zach Wilson. We'll get to that probably later. We'll see how he drafts and ends up falling to. But I will say this, Pitts I do believe to be a phenomenal generational talent. I think Jamar Chase is ready for success right away. But I'm going to go another way. I'm going to go with Najee Harris, just because I believe so much in what I've seen out of that kid in Alabama. I was just so impressed with how good of an overall back he was, and I do think he is the bell cow guy from day one there, and I think that's something you can value right away. It's going to help your team be good right away. I understand the shelf life. I get it. It may be questionable, but at the same time, I think I'm going to go ahead, take that plunge, make it work, and I'm going to go ahead with Najee Harris as my second pick here as I go through, which would be number 4 overall on the board. That puts Tags now on the clock.
Yeah, I mean, this is the second time that I've been kind of in a position where I didn't think I was going to get this player. Yates and I just did the FantasyPros Invitational rookie draft, and I had the 6th pick in the rookie draft, and it's a super flex league. And Jamar Chase fell to me there, and it was like I needed a quarterback extremely bad, and Zach Wilson was really the only one left on the board that I would have even considered, and I chose to go Chase because you cannot pass up a generational talent in order just to fill a need on your roster. We're past the point of quarterbacks that are locked into their roles, the ones that we trust for the long term, that we like during the scouting process, that landed in a good spot. We're past that. You have to take the players who that are going to be on your roster for a long time. Reuniting with Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase is in the conversation for the 101 pick in dynasty drafts that have one quarterback between him and Najee Harris, depending on how your roster is built. But again, this is a startup, and it's, a wide receiver is going to last in your roster a lot longer than a running back typically does. And I might be stealing Yates' thunder here about, Kyle Pitts probably going next because it seems like that's the consensus. But in reality, it's a lot harder to project a tight end in the NFL than it is a wide receiver. And we've seen that time after time. Tight ends typically take, a couple of years to get going. And can Pitts be an exception to the rule? Of course he can. But do you want to bet on that? No. I'll take Jamar Chase.
Yeah, I mean, I can't argue against that. And although it's sort of the same reasoning I use, which is although I absolutely love the talent of Kyle Pitts, there's still the questions of how long does it take? Could he buck the trend and be that guy from year one? Absolutely. He's probably set up better than anybody else. But Yates, I know this feels a little chalky right now, the way this has gone, these first 5 picks with Lawrence, Lance, Fields, and Harris, and then Chase. But I mean, it does kind of feel like that's where the value is in terms of if you're looking long-term and short-term value on the board.
Absolutely. This is kind of how I've seen it play out so far. This is what Ray and I have talked about it play out so far. This is what Ray and I have talked about on the Dynasty podcast, that top tier contributors of Najee Harris and Jamar Chase at their respective positions. In Superflex, you highly value the quarterback position, so those guys go off the board. I think that it makes complete sense. So here at the 106, I am going to add another one of those top tier contributors. Now, it's a bit risky, right? When you look at drafting a tight end at this spot of a rookie draft, specifically a super flex, where you do have Zach Wilson still on the board. But when you look at the tight end position, you look at the guys who have been those reliable, steady contributors, Travis Kelce, George Kittle, Darren Waller, Kyle Pitts has the potential to be as consistent as all of them, if not even more so. So I'm going to take Kyle Pitts here at the 106 because I do believe that it should go Najee Harris as the RB1 consensus. Jamar Chase is kind of that consensus wide receiver 1. Let's get the tight end 1, the consensus player here off the board. And I'm really, really happy to be sitting in the middle of the first round and get a dynamic player like Kyle Pitts.
It absolutely is. And now is when the draft really starts. I think these first 6 picks, anybody could do this. Now it's a matter of where you want to go next and what do you see the value being on the board. And there are a few running backs out there in Travis Etienne, Javonte Williams. There's also Devontae Smith and Jalen Waddle. We've talked about these guys a lot. Now, being a super flex, I'm tempted, to grab Wilson here, but there's just a lot there that still, once again, I'm questioning. So it's a little difficult situation. I know it's super flex. Everything's telling me I should go that way, but you know what? I'm going to buck the trend a little bit here, and I am buying into the fact that Jacksonville used a ton of draft capital here to get Travis Etienne over onto this team. And you know what? That's where I'm going to go with this 7th pick. I do not buy into this, oh yeah, we're going to use him slowly and kind of figure out things. Yeah, right. You just spent first round draft capital on a running back and he's going to be a third down guy. I'm not buying that at all. Especially the last guy that was there was an undrafted free agent from the last regime. So I'm sorry. There's no loyalty in football and there's no loyalty here. Give me Travis Etienne with the 7th pick overall. Tags, that puts you onto the clock.
Yeah, I dig that pick. That's exactly where I was hoping to go with this pick. You started talking about everybody, and I'm like, take Wilson, do it.
I can't do it. He's too squeaky clean.
Well,
can't do it.
This is tough because, we're at a point in the draft where it's like now we're doing this, like, we're drafting for multiple teams, it seems like. And if you're going through a startup, I have to assume that this is a different team that I'm drafting for than the one that I drafted Trey Lance with.
Of course.
So Zach Wilson, this is probably about the spot he should go because you look at the wide receivers there between Devontae Smith, and it's like, we've had our question marks about the size thing. I think he's going to be fine. But again, there are some doubts. He is an outlier in terms of, what you'd expect from someone his weight. Jalen Waddle, but in Miami with Tua, with the other pass catchers there's some questions. Javonte Williams, solid running back. If you want to go running back in this spot, I don't fault you for doing that. But in a super flex format, I can't see letting Zach Wilson fall anymore because, again, you took him at number 2 overall. The Jets are the first franchise ever to take I think it was a quarterback in the top 3 in a 4-year span. I think they're the first team to ever do that, which tells me they're going to give Zach Wilson every chance to succeed. They were apparently locked onto him from the beginning. I don't know why that was the case. I think that there should have been more of a question mark about who they drafted. But again, he's got some mobility to his game. He's got a big arm. It is a new coaching staff, so we can't automatically assume the Jets just suck. That's just not, we can't do that anymore. Hopefully this franchise turns it around because I believe everybody should have at least a franchise that's competent. So I'll take Zach Wilson here.
All right, that puts you up, Yates, for the 1-9 pick. So the way the board's unfolding, there's some value left at wide receiver, another running back out there too. Which way do you want to go?
There is absolutely some value here at wide receiver. In my Superflex rankings, sitting there at number 6 overall on my big board is Jalen Waddle. I do have him as wide receiver 2. Had him as wide receiver 2 heading into the draft. He stayed right there, knowing his landing spot, getting that number 6 overall draft capital in the NFL draft. So Jalen Waddle here in Miami, I do believe is going to be utilized the way Henry Ruggs should have been in Las Vegas. He's going to slide right into the slot there. Devontae Parker is going to be on the outside. Will Fuller on the outside when he comes back from his 1-game suspension. And then Waddle is going to be asked to be able to operate underneath, get those short area targets, and then create after the catch with his speed and athleticism. Now, long term, after Will Fuller potentially moves on next year, do you kick Waddle outside? Potentially. But I think year 1, Waddle has the speed and athleticism to be a threat right away, especially with the familiarity with Tua Tagovailoa. So Jalen Waddle here at the 109, I will gladly take him here.
All right, in case you missed it, earlier this week, Tax and I did a little best ball show, and we had a great conversation about the guy that I'm probably going to take next year, which is Devontae Smith, which is not only is he a football player, but he's also a guy who's probably slated to get a ton of action right away. Now, I don't know what we're talking about in this player 4 or 5 years from now. I'm trying not to look that far ahead. I always like 3-year windows. And I think you can get a pretty good 3-year window out of this player. Devontae Smith had an incredible college career, incredible 2020. I'm going to go ahead and take the Slim Reaper, take the boy that I know Tags is a big fan of, and so am I. So let's go with the Slim Reaper, Devontae Smith here, wide receiver from the Philadelphia Eagles at the 10th spot. And that's a pretty good value to get a player with those kind of stats. And, I think that Jalen Hurts can certainly continue to help him progress in the NFL. I think this is a good situation for him where he gets a ton of volume right away. And I tell him, Tags, you kind of agree with that, right?
Yeah, no, I do. And I just think that he produces more out of the gate than Jalen Waddle. Waddle might have more upside in the long term, but I do like Devontae Smith. He would be the one I'd take over Waddle, but it's extremely close. You're nitpicking there. They're both going to be players in this league. And you took, Devontae Smith. It's funny. I was the last pick I had was Zach Wilson. The player that I really wanted to take that I was kind of like, oh, but I can't let Wilson fall any further, was Javonte Williams. Yeah. I mean, I don't want to pass on a running back that's on his rookie deal here. It's just that, he walks into the league behind Melvin Gordon. Whoop-de-doo. The Broncos showed last year that they really did not care about Melvin Gordon. I don't know what it was in the offense or whatever the case was, but it seemed like they didn't want to trust him. Phillip Lindsay wasn't playing particularly well last year. He was trying to play through injuries, and they were splitting the workload seemingly 50-50 most of the time. And then, you still have some legal concerns off the field in terms of a drunk driving thing. I know the charges were dropped, but the league could still hand down discipline. So, them as the Broncos, they're going to have a timeshare right out of the gate, and Javonte Williams might be a better running back than Melvin Gordon. I like Melvin Gordon. This is nothing against him, but Javonte Williams was one of those guys that some people had as the RB1 in this class. So to get him here on a team that's going to score a lot of points in the near future, whether it be with Drew Lock at quarterback or their future quarterback, there's just too much talent here not to score points. So Javonte Williams here at the 111 feels like a steal. I
got to tell you, I was contemplating him with that last pick I made. Yates, are you in agreement, too, that Williams in Denver feels like a guy that could make a big impact right away? We're talking 21. We're talking even early in the season, just because not only of Melvin Gordon's off-the-field issues, but let's not forget, he's a guy that's dealt with multiple injuries the last few seasons anyway, when he was playing with the Chargers anyhow. So, in your opinion, do you think this is a great value steal? Because this feels like a really strong first round for fantasy in any dynasty startup, Superflex or not.
Absolutely. I mean, when you take into account Melvin Gordon's DUI situation, and Tags laid that out perfectly, but I think when you take that into account, sure, I do think that Javonte Williams can make an impact right away. My concern is that what happens if Melvin Gordon doesn't get handed down discipline for that DUI? Then at that point, you've got a timeshare situation here where I just don't think that Javonte Williams gets out to like a hot start right away. And that's kind of what you're hoping for here with some of these first round picks. And a perfect example from previous years is Henry Ruggs. Henry Ruggs was drafted in the first round last year. He did not get off to a hot start and people bailed. You're able to get Henry Ruggs in dynasty leagues for a third round pick now. So what happens if Javonte Williams, if you do draft him here in the first round and you don't have that mindset that you've got to be patient with him, you might have to wait until 2022 for him to like come out and actually give you that top tier talent and production, which I do think he is capable of. That's just a little bit of a concern. So if you are drafting him here in the first round, which I do think that you have to, and I do think that he deserves to, you just have to be prepared for that you might see more of a committee approach here than you might be willing and wanting to see.
All right, Yates, that's put you on the clock now at the 112 spot. So close us out in this first round.
Yeah, so Ray and I were talking on the Dynasty podcast that we recorded just last night, saying that Rashad Bateman here landing in Baltimore, not my favorite landing spot, right? When you looked at some of the other situations that he could have fallen into in that first round, it would have been much, much better for a fantasy, output, and he probably would have been going off the board within the top 6 picks in 1 QB formats. Here in Baltimore, with how just not pass heavy, with how run heavy this offense is, it's a little bit of a concern. With that still being said, Ray and I were in agreement that Rashad Bateman should not fall outside of the first round of your Superflex leagues, regardless or not. So Rashad Bateman here, I do think that he's not going to have that solid top tier production, but I do think that he is the wide receiver 1 in this offense from the minute that he steps onto the field. So I think Rashad Bateman here in the first round, I'm willing to draft him here knowing that I might not get the top tier production right away. But what happens if Baltimore does open up the offense just a little bit? He's got the talent. This is more so of I'm betting on the talent versus the situation that he fell into. So Rashad Bateman here at the 112.
All right, so the first round is in the books, and some glorious talent has gone on to these teams. And we're going to take a quick moment just to recognize the sponsor of today's show, and it's Sheath. So what's Sheath? Well, it's boxers that are designed to keep your balls off your legs. That's right. Sheath has 3 individual compartments to keep everything down there separate and cool and comfortable. Traditional boxer briefs are barbaric, invented during the Neanderthal era, and Sheath has modern ergonomic design intended to prevent skin and skin contact for long durations, which can build up heat and sweat. So Sheath prevents all of that, and it's the holy grail of underwear. That's right. They sent us all a bunch of Sheath, and I'll tell you what, it's pretty damn cool. So there is an inverted kangaroo pouch for your Joey, and yes, maybe my Joey as well, which will not chafe you. You'll have to readjust less. It's just a better situation all the way around for your situation. So this was invented by the U.S. Army soldier who came up with the idea for Sheath during his second tour in Iraq, where it's hot as hell and his boys needed to breathe. So help out a great business from a veteran and go to sheath.com. Again, that is SHEATH underwear.com. That's sheathunderwear.com, and FantasyPros at checkout, and you can get 20% off of your first order. Again, that's 20% off. Use the code FantasyPros, and it is sheathunderwear.com. We want to thank Sheath for sponsoring today's fantasy football podcast here at Fantasy Pros. That puts me on the clock, and thank goodness that my Joey's had some time to breathe here in between these picks, and we can continue on here with the next one. Now, there's a couple different spots I think you can go here. I always tend to lean running back heavy just because, when you see somebody who's drafted in a situation where maybe there's a lot of playing time potentially out there, and the Jets really have not been able to figure out this running back position for a long time, I feel like. It's been a while since they've gotten somebody right in there. There are a few other wide receivers there too. Elijah Moore still out there, and a few other ones that are very talented. I like the landing spot of Amon-Ra St. Brown as well. But you know what? I think I'm going to go with Michael Carter here. That's right. I'm going to go with Michael Carter of the Jets. I just think that there's a reason why they targeted this guy. I think that there's really very little competition for him in New York, and I think he's going to show out. So give me Michael Carter here, running back. Might be surprising, but you know what? That's okay. It's okay to be a little crazy and a little off the board sometimes. Tags, that puts you on the clock for the second pick in the second round.
Yeah, this is tough. There's a couple players I'm considering here. I think Rondale Moore is someone that should be considered. But going to Arizona, Christian Kirk's not going to just go away. DeAndre Hopkins obviously not going to go away. He's going to get a majority of the targets, and you have to manufacture touches for Rondale Moore. Does Larry Fitzgerald come back? There's just question marks, right? Mm-hmm. So I don't really want to go all in on him. I don't think he's a bad pick at this spot, but I think I'm going to go with a running back here because I think it's the last running back that you could actually have a shot at getting a starter, and that's Trey Sermon out of San Francisco. They traded up for him in the third round. This is similar to what the Bears did to get David Montgomery a couple of years back. And while a lot of people, myself included, I don't want to say I was low on Trey Sermon. I wasn't high on him. I felt like he was a decent player, but I didn't know where he fit in today's NFL. But then when you go with Kyle Shanahan and you get a team, again, with Kyle Shanahan, a team that traded up to get you, and a team that really doesn't have very many picks next year. They don't have any high-value picks. So it's like they traded away their future for Trey Lance. They need to get their roster right. And to know that they saw something in him, he got better as the year went on at Ohio State. And it was like they saw a player that basically might be able to handle a big workload. You look at guys like, Jeff Wilson. He was the 4th on the depth chart last year. Worked his way up. Cool. He succeeded in the Shanahan system. A lot of running backs have. You look at Raheem Mostert. He's a guy that I think he's in the final year of his deal this year. So Trey Sermon could walk in, and I'm not anticipating him to be a force to be reckoned with right away, but I do believe he's going to get, I'll say, 8 to 12 touches per game, and maybe eventually work his way into a bigger role, especially in 2022. So this is a little bit forward thinking, but again, the running back position dries up after him in terms of getting potential guys that can handle 15 plus touches. So I'll go with Trey Sermon here.
I went back and forth between Sermon and Carter there. And for me, I kind of like the fact that Carter didn't get all the touches. Sometimes people want to knock the guys and say, well, when you share a backfield, we don't really know what the guy is. You know what the guy is? Fresh. That's what he is. He's coming into the league a little fresher than some other guys sometimes. We've seen these great workhorse running backs in college get to the NFL and not have as much left in the tank. I'm also a little worried about the rest of those guys in that San Francisco backfield. Wilson did play well at the end of the year. They seem to be infatuated with Mostert. This is a tough call here. Yates, I'm curious of Carter and of Sermon here. How do you kind of disseminate between these two guys?
So my big board process after the draft is taking into account my pre-draft grades and then factoring in a landing spot grade for each of those. So Trey Sermon maxed out his landing spot grade because I really do love the fact that they traded up for him and that he's in an offense now, has the potential to be the main running back. Yes, you're going to see some of these other guys factor in, but he has the potential to be the main running back in an offense that I truly believe is about to go nuclear. So with Trey Sermon, scoring opportunities are absolutely going to be there. The difference was that I was not very high on Trey Sermon, and he's my RB5 now. Michael Carter was my RB5 heading into the draft, and so he's now my RB4. So I am giving that slight edge to Michael Carter. Carter is number 13 overall on my Superflex big board. Trey Sermon is number 14 overall. So we're right there. We're following it. The one thing that I did want to mention is that these two guys going at the top of the second round in Superflex leagues is a hot topic right now on Twitter. There are a lot of analysts that are bickering about this, that are talking about, I am willing to go wide receiver here. I'm going to let these guys pass. Here's the thing that I'm in complete agreement with the two of you for taking these guys here at this spot, because at the end of the day, we have to fill the running back spot on our rosters, right? And as you look across the dynasty landscape, running back is becoming more and more scarce, where you're seeing more and more teams move towards committee approaches. There aren't these locked in workhorse running backs that we feel super, super confident in. So being able to grab someone like Michael Carter, who has the draft capital to indicate that he can be a solid asset. He has a path to be the RB1 on this roster. Trey Sermon has the narrative that they traded up to get him. Everything is pointing in their direction and pointing up, whereas with some of these other running backs in Dynasty, we can't say the same thing for. So I'm perfectly willing to take him here because at the end of the day, we do need to fill the running back spot on our roster. In a vacuum, would I prefer some of these other wide receivers? Yeah, I probably would, but I'm going to place an importance on the running back position. So I'm in complete agreement here with you guys taking these guys where you did.
Well, I think it's a very important conversation because I think you're right. It's the conversation that everybody's going to be having with themselves when you get into that second round of what the board looks like. There's a ton of wide receiver talent still out there, but the running back talent, I think, dries up right about now. I think we can all kind of turn our keys on that one, basically. So that being said, Yates, you're on the clock with a bunch of that wide receiver talent staring you in the face. So who is on your board to go next?
There absolutely is still a wide receiver that I am eyeing, but I do think that I can get him just a little bit later. I've seen him going a little bit later here in some of my rookie drafts. So what I'm going to do here, guys, is I'm going to take the quarterback. And this is not the quarterback that I thought that I would be taking in a mock draft, but I am going to take Mac Jones here because this is too much value to pass up on in a Superflex league at the quarterback position. He's got the first-round draft capital. He's competing with Cam Newton. We don't know what Cam Newton's full health is. Maybe it takes a year for Mac Jones to fully see the field and they move forward in 2022 with Jones. So I just don't know what that situation is going to play out or how it's going to play out, but they invested a lot here in Mac Jones. He's a talented quarterback for who he is, and to get him here at the 203, right, I just feel like that's too much value to pass up on. So Mac Jones, 203.
Well, if it makes you feel any better, that was going to be my pick. I was ready to do it just because all those same reasons that you just laid out. In the second round here, you know he's that guy who's going to get that opportunity. Cam Newton's on that one-year deal. They're going to at least see if they can make this work with Mac Jones, and he seems to have all the confidence that he can make it work, and that's what Mac Jones brings. No, he doesn't bring great athleticism necessarily. He doesn't throw well outside the pocket or any of that, but then again, neither did that guy named Brady, and he ain't Brady. But in terms of confidence level, in terms of football intelligence, he certainly checks all of those boxes. Now, I'm just going to go with pure talent here, and I'm going to go with Rondale Moore of the wide receiver for the Arizona Cardinals. Again, it's, Tags brought up a great point before about, Moore's out there, and I'm very tempted, and now I just can't let him pass. I'm going to go ahead and take him out there, and I think that, what I saw to A.J. Green last year was a player who looked like he was basically done. I mean, he had so many targets early on there with Joe Burrow, and you could say, wow, he didn't play last year and the timing's off and make all the excuses in the world. But you know what? I'm done making excuses. Rondale Moore is young. The younger guys tend to win out here. I am in agreement with Tags when he said that Christian Kirk is not disappearing. He's not. But once again, this is Dynasty, so this is my first of the I'm looking to the future more than I'm looking to right now, and I'm just going to invest in the talent of Rondale Moore. So that's where I'm going here. Tags, you are next up on the clock.
Yeah, I'm going to take a wide receiver here that Yates and I kind of I think both of us were lower than the consensus on Terrace Marshall out of LSU. He went to the Panthers, and it was an interesting landing spot because I really don't know how this offense is going to operate. Are they going to move DJ Moore into the slot? Are they going to put Terrace Marshall there to make his transition to the NFL a little bit easier? Because traditionally, if you start out in the slot, it's like you that big slot wide receiver, you're going to face nickel corners and all that. Terrace Marshall has that experience at LSU. They put him there in 2020. He has experience in the perimeter as well. So they could do a variety of things. They might even move around him and DJ Moore, split the time there, which would be it'd be beneficial for them production-wise, efficiency-wise, especially with Sam Darnold, a guy who's traditionally favored his wide receivers over the middle of the field. So Terrace Marshall was one of the lone big wide receivers in this class, and the ceiling might be there with him. While, again, I think that he was more a product of a situation than he was sheer talent. I do believe he can produce in this league. Robbie Anderson's got just 1 year left on his deal. They didn't even replace Curtis Samuel, so there's room for 3 wide receivers in this offense because they don't utilize the tight end. And Tommy Tremble is good. As much as I like him as a player, he's not going to be a guy that's going to, get a whole bunch of targets in this offense. So I think that there's still going to be plenty of targets available for these wide receivers. So Terrace Marshall might be able to produce right away. And if Robbie Anderson leaves after this year, all of a sudden you're looking even more potential in 2022.
Oh, I think that Robbie Anderson contract it makes him a really good investment potentially there. And I the more that we have time to marinate on some of these things that happen in the offseason, it's weird because free agency happens and it's like a blur, and then you're right into the draft coverage. And the more you got to sit back, and I know I'm working on the Black Book now, you guys are working on your rankings, everyone's kind of in the salt mines right now, and you're starting to look at things and go, Sam Darnold's in a situation to be successful here. If he's not, it's really just on him at this point, potentially. And you got to start to go back and look at all the things that people liked about Darnold going in to his NFL career. And I think we all want to just dust it off and kind of reset him. And if so, Terrace Marshall could be a very good player and an impact player for him in the next 2 or 3 years in that offense. All right, that puts you on the clock here, Yates, for the next pick. So what's the board look like to you?
Oh, man, I'm deciding between 2 wide receivers here, and they're Elijah Moore and Amon-Ra St. Brown. Elijah Moore landing in New York as the slot receiver there, and then Amon-Ra St. Brown landing in Detroit. I was very high on Amon-Ra St. Brown. I have no idea why he fell to the 4th round of the NFL draft, but I'm going to take Amon-Ra St. Brown here because of the landing spot and because the fact that he could see immediate production, right? With Elijah Moore, this is a crowded offense. You still have Jamison Crowder on this roster playing that slot role. I do expect Jamison Crowder to be moved on from by week 1 of the 2021 season because of his cap hit, but Corey Davis, Denzel Mims, Keelan Cole. I mean, I think Braxton Berrios is still on this roster, right? Like, it's just a loaded receiving core where there are a lot of mouths to feed in this offense that traditionally has not featured a slot receiver like Elijah Moore. So I'm a little bit concerned about that. I'm going to go with Amon-Ra St. Brown because that immediate guarantee that he can step onto the field week 1 and he can see a whole ton of targets here in this offense on a team that is going to be throwing the ball a ton. So even if Elijah Moore has a better long-term output, I know that Amon-Ra is going to give me immediate value to the point where maybe I can sell him off here pretty quickly. So Amon-Ra St. Brown, 206 off the board.
Everything you said, I just want to second, and I want to third it, I want to fourth it, I want to do everything. And because I was looking and take him on Ross St. Brown, so you sniped me there. But it's exactly the same reasoning. I mean, how do you not look in terms of path to playing time and impact and not see a better one there in Detroit for St. Brown? It's just obvious. Which leaves me, unfortunately, in the situation where now I have to look at all the inverse of what you just said, which is, yeah, all those guys are ahead of him, but do I think that Moore is going to eventually crack through all of that and make an impact? And I think yes. And I think it's also indicative of the fact that he was taken by this new coaching staff and this new regime that obviously has targeted him and likes him, and hopefully the Jets, like Tag said, are going in the right direction. That would be a good situation there. So I think Elijah Moore is the value pick here at 207, which is where we are in the second round. To get him, I think late second round is a fantastic investment in the talent. Although I do have concerns right away how much he can do in the first year or so. But you never know. The NFL is a strange beast. Injuries can happen. Opportunities can show up sooner than later. And you never know. He could have a fantastic training camp and all of a sudden really open some eyes in preseason as well. So, Tags, you are on the clock for the 8th pick in the second round. Which way are you going?
One of the rules that you have to live by in fantasy football, whether it be dynasty, whether it be redraft, whatever, know who you're drafting with, right? And
Son of a gun.
You're not going to do it, are you? I almost did it, and I was like, they're going to yell at me if I do it here.
No, it's understanding the board, understanding the players you're okay with, understanding the tiers, and sometimes you're able to wait longer on players because you know the players in your draft. Sometimes you have to take players because you know they're going to come off the board, and that's exactly what I'm going to do here. Dwayne Eskridge, Seattle wide receiver. Honestly, this is where, to be fair, I'm going to be completely honest with you. There are only 2 players that I have ahead of him, so he's right. This is right in the territory where I have him ranked. It's just more about, like, can I get those players that there's one that I have a lot of question marks about. The other one I have even more questions about. So I'm okay taking Dwayne Eskridge here. He's second round draft equity is no joke. I don't think people realize just how much opportunity second round wide receivers get. And in fact, when I do my research in terms of like the opportunity players get based on where they were drafted, first and second round receivers are almost identical. So it doesn't even matter. Once you fall to the third round, it drops, and then the fourth round drops even more, where it's like that second round draft equity. When Yates, I loved how he brought this up, saying, you know, on a show a couple weeks ago, or last week, where
they all run together.
They kind of do at some point, but Yates brought up the fact that Eskridge, you know, he's a guy that Seattle had 3 picks in this entire draft, and they chose
the draft grade show. That's the one we're talking about.
Yeah, and they chose to utilize that pick. They didn't trade back like Seattle always does. They legit always trade back. Everybody in mocks, it's like, oh, Seattle's trading back. Just put them as a trade back, and you might get it wrong who they're trading with, but they're going to trade back. They had 3 picks in the entire draft, and they used that second round pick rather than gaining a bunch of day 3 picks. So they clearly have plans for him. If they do go more 3 wide receiver sets with the new offensive coordinator, good for him. I'll take the shot on him here because there is no guaranteed picks here at the 208. There's no guaranteed picks on the board right now, so I'm going to take Dwayne Eskridge and be happy that I ticked off Yates again.
You ticked off me too because I got okey-doked here because I know what you guys do. I do enough shows with you. I see all your rankings and what you got going. I study my opponents well, and I thought I had one more shot around. I was like, ooh, before it gets into the third round later, I'm going to go right before the third round, and I'm going to take Eskridge just to get a rise out of the boys, plus everything that you mentioned. Well, I think there's actually a path to actually making an impact in 21, and we just got smoked here. Yates, this doesn't feel good. I don't like this at all, and especially because Tags did it. I'm really frustrated, I gotta say.
Tags, I hate you so much.
I hate you guys.
Man, Dwayne Eskridge, I love the pick here, and I just went on a rant about Eskridge here and the consensus and just kind of what people are thinking about him. He's fallen. People are tagging me on Twitter and saying that he's fallen to the 4th round of their rookie drafts. Like,
that's nuts. That's nuts.
What are we doing here right now? Like, this is ridiculous. Walk out of every single draft that you're in with Dwayne Eskridge, because if you can get him in the 3rd round, that's an absolute steal. So yeah, Tag, I was kind of going with Amon-Ra St. Brown. I was like, I think I can get, Tags, I hate you so much. Okay, so I'm going to go here with a wide receiver who I'm not crazy about this landing spot with New York, right? Joe, you made that joke right off the top at the show saying that, Giants wide receivers, man, there are just so many mouths to feed in this offense, but you look at the draft capital, that's kind of what I'm going to fall back on here with Kadarius Toney. Like, I really like the talent. I had him as wide receiver 6 in this class heading into the NFL draft. He went as the 4th wide receiver off the board to an offense that, Kenny Golladay, Darius Slayton, Sterling Shepard, Evan Ingram, Kyle Rudolph, Saquon Barkley out of the backfield, Devontae Booker too, they brought in free agency. Like, there are so many mouths to feed, but the long-term projection here, like they're going to fall back on the fact that they drafted him at number 20 overall. So I think he's going to be utilized a ton in this offense. I'm going to lean back on the talent level there and that he can make things happen after the catch. So just get the ball in his hands, let him create. Here at the 209, I feel like that's too much. That's too good of a value to pass up.
All right, Kadarius Toney at the 209, and I'm still reeling for that Eskridge thing because this is what I had planned. I was ready to go and pull the trigger on it. I thought for sure I had one pick between each of you before we got there, but again, didn't even make it to the 3rd round. This is tough. This is a tough room, I got to tell you. A couple guys here on the board. I'm considering Kenneth Gainwell here. Tags and I this week have talked at length about him and what we see him potentially doing in that offense, especially as the year goes on. But you know what? I'm going to take the field stretcher here. I'm going to go with De'Ami Brown, the Washington football team. Fitzpatrick can sling the football still. In fact, he was one of the highest guys in terms of average yards per target there. And I got to tell you, I'm looking at all the other guys on the board. Amari Rodgers interesting, Gainwell very interesting to me, but I'm going to go with De'Ami Brown. I just feel like Washington's a team that's putting it all together, and their process has been so good that I'm going to start to trust their evaluations on talent because I think they've done a very good job here in this last year of really remaking a franchise rather quickly when you consider it. I mean, it's tough sometimes to turn over an organization very quickly, and I feel like Ron Rivera and his group has done that indeed. So give me De'Ami Brown, wide receiver, Washington football team. That puts you on the clock for the 11th pick in the 2nd round, Tags.
Yeah, I mean, I know that whatever player I pass on here, he's gonna come off the board the next 2 picks, which really sucks. So it's going back and forth, and this would be a tiebreaker that I'd look at my roster and say, what do I really need? Do I need depth at one position? Because neither of these players are going to be starters for you immediately. But let's go with the player I have ranked higher. I mean, even though I'm going to adjust this ranking very soon, depending on what we hear out of Green Bay, but Amari Rodgers is a wide receiver. For the Packers to use day 2 equity on a wide receiver is extremely rare. And if you actually go back through Aaron Rodgers' career to see what those wide receivers have done that they've drafted on day 2, because they've never drafted a day 1 receiver, but on day 2, and if you look at them, they've all been highly productive fantasy wide receivers. So, but the problem is, we don't know if Aaron Rodgers is going to be there. I'm not going to say Amari Rodgers is going to be a nobody if Rodgers is not there, but obviously that increases his appeal so much. But taking a shot here at the end of the second round, it feels about the spot where Amari Rodgers should come off the board, so that's where I'm going to go.
I still think Rodgers is just coming back. Aaron,
I don't think so.
I do. I think everything just falls back into place. Somebody gets into somebody and it all works out. I just don't see him having a better path to... I don't think the Denver Broncos is a better path. I'm sorry. I just don't.
This is not the Bronx, Joe. They don't just pass something like, hey, we're good. You know, no. Someone's got to die. Someone has to die. And it's got to be the GM. That's basically what they have to do is if they don't fire the GM, apparently Rodgers isn't coming back. And Yates, you were shaking your head. I think you actually agree with me here.
He does.
Yeah, I mean, Aaron Rodgers, this is all about respect. Like, he's been telling people for a year that he's not going to be back in Green Bay the season after this. He was going to ball out and do what he does, and he did that with a limited receiving core. He did it with Devontae Adams and no one else, and he's the greatest passing quarterback of all time. He just wants some respect. He wants if Green Bay surrounded him with actual talent, like around him, and they loaded up, they would win the Super Bowl every single year. Guaranteed. No one's stopping that offense. So he wants the respect on his name. He wants to go to a spot that's actually going to realize the talent that they have. They're not going to draft his replacement. What's going on here? So yeah, I think that Aaron Rodgers is gone.
It's going to be a fun. This feels like another wager. Which, by the way, the corn shirt is on its way. In case anyone's asking. Because I know some people have been tweeting about it, wondering. The corn shirt's on its way. It's en route. I don't know if Amazon's delivering it or whatever, but it should be on Yates sometime next week. So keep an eye out for that. And that's why you subscribe to the YouTube channel here over at Fantasy Pros, so you can watch the podcast and see Yates in uncomfortable shirts of bands that he has no idea who they are. So let's continue on here. And before we do, I'm going to take a quick break here also to recognize another sponsor of today's show, RT Sports. RTSports.com has best balls going everywhere for you. Better payouts than the competitors. You can trade players and draft picks, and a 20% off deposit that they will match with the promo code PROS. So if you go to rtsports.com and you enter the code PROS, just like that, 20% deposit match. Again, best ball leagues payout. They're fun. You can go ahead. You have all the fun of drafting. None of the worries of managing and setting lineups and all that stuff. It's the way to go. They have a great best ball format over at RT Sports. 9 starters plus 15 bench spots. Total point standings, PPR or Superflex scoring. And 1 in 4 teams will win cash. So head over to RT Sports today and put in that code PROS and get that 20% deposit match. Thanks to us, your friends at Fantasy Pros. All right. Boys, let's kick things up here a notch because we are now in the second part here of the draft. We're pulling forward here. Yates, finish out the second round strong with the 12th pick.
Yeah, let's go with the quarterback here. Again, we're talking about the value of quarterbacks in a Superflex league, and as I look at those later quarterbacks that were drafted of Kyle Trask in the back end of the second round of the NFL draft, Kellen Mond, Davis Mills, the guy who really jumps out to me is Kellen Mond here in Minnesota because he does have a path to be able to be a starting quarterback here sooner rather than later. With Davis Mills, completely wasted pick. I don't know. I do not understand why they drafted Davis Mills when you are going to be holding the number 1 overall pick in the draft next year. If Deshaun Watson, if this situation clears to them, he still doesn't want to be in town. So you're going to trade him. You're going to get some significant draft capital in return there. So use that to be able to draft a better quarterback than Davis Mills, who I had rated very low. So I just think this was a complete waste of pick with Davis Mills. Kyle Trask, I think, is still a couple years away from starting, and even then, he doesn't have the high-end ceiling for fantasy production. Kellen Mond can move, and I think that he fits this system pretty well. So I'm going to go Kellen Mond here at the 212 because I'm willing to take that shot on a quarterback here in the back end of the second, early third, that I do think can be a starter sooner rather than later.
I hate you, Yates. That's where I was going. I was going to be all like, look at me. I'm taking the quarterback to start the third round, but you sniped it. Look, big arm quarterbacks, again, it's just that's what they do there at that school. I mean, do we need to see any more? I mean, that's what they're all about. And give a guy a little bit of time here to develop under, the Vikings group here with as he gets sit under behind Kirk Cousins here and get a little bit of time there to just kind of get his feel for the NFL and fix some of the deficiencies that he's got. But I'm with you 100%, man. I love this. I think this is a fantastic situation for him, and it's all upside. In a Superflex, you take this shot here, and Kirk Cousins, another year or two maybe, and then you start to look elsewhere and see what you can get done there. Love this pick. Think it's fantastic in the Superflex right before the third round. Be aggressive. Be aggressive on the players you like. And that is the lesson of this draft so far. All right, third round time. I'm going to be aggressive on the tight end here, and I know it might take him a little while, but Pat Freiermuth, look, of Penn State going to the Pittsburgh Steelers. I'm going to go ahead and take the tight end and give him some time here to develop. I don't expect him to do too much in year one. I understand there's uncertainty with the Pittsburgh future at quarterback, and I think it's part of that uncertainty that makes him kind of fall into this range. But you know what? To kick off the third round, I'm going to take the talent on the board, and I think that's the talent on the board. Tags, you are up next with the second pick.
The player I wanted last round is still here. I didn't think he would be, but Kenneth Gainwell, running back out of
I almost took him, but you know what? I forgot about Freiermuth too, and I was like, I'm going to take the tight end.
He's not going to be a workhorse running back. I mean, especially with where he was drafted, but at the same time, he's going to be a contributor. I believe he could be Chris Thompson, Nyheim Hines, Tariq Cohen in that range of running backs where he's a flex player that you can use that gives you a decent floor. So getting him here at the top of the third, it feels like stealing.
All right, that brings us to the third pick in the third round. Yates, you're on the clock.
This is a player that I'm not necessarily super high on, but he's got the draft capital to his name, and that's Josh Palmer, the wide receiver out of Los Angeles with the Chargers. Like, the Chargers, with some needs on their roster, they looked at and said that we need an eventual Mike Williams replacement, and if you can guarantee me a wide receiver that is going to get on the field because he's got the third-round draft capital with Justin Herbert, I'll take that shot. I might not get a ton out of Palmer in year one, but it's the long-term projection here, knowing that he's probably going to step in for Mike Williams in the in 2022. And if that's the case, then it's wheels up. So I'll go Palmer here at the beginning of the third round.
This is tough now. This is where it starts to get a little wacky. There's a part of me that wants to take a shot on Trask, but Tom Brady's going to play forever. So I mean, that's a very difficult thing to do. I mean, I think the worst job of the NFL is backup for Tom Brady, right? It's like, someday you'll play, kid. No, you won't. You're never going to play. It's never going to happen.
No, you won't.
It's just never going to happen. Oh, it's okay. In a couple of years, they'll transition. No, they're not going to. It's not going to happen. It's tough. I feel like this is where the well dries up. I think Gainwell was that pick there. Kellen Mond, you start to talk about those guys. I like Nico Collins, the player. I hate the Texans right now. I'm kind of struggling here with this pick a little bit because of that, and this is tough. This is where I think you start to look and you start to go, okay, well, who's going to probably get an opportunity? And I actually think that Collins probably gets the opportunity just by default because it's just not a lot going on there. So I don't love this. I'm not happy about this. I'm going to do it anyway. I'm going to take Nico Collins, and that's where I'm going here with this fourth pick. Tags, take me out of my misery with another pick.
All right. So, you have to know who you're drafting with and all these things. So there's players that I like here that I can wait on a little bit that I do like. So I'm actually going to go with another Baltimore wide receiver. Tylan Wallace was someone I really liked during the draft process. I feel like he's a reliable receiver. I wanted the Chiefs to draft him so bad because I just feel like he's someone that you can rely upon. You can't rely upon Sammy Watkins. Obviously, that's why he's out of town now. But Tylan Wallace going to Baltimore, not ideal landing spot for a team that really doesn't throw the ball a whole lot. Does that change a little bit this year? It might change a little bit. Even if we gave them a 15% increase, it's still a low volume offense. But this is more like a thinking down the road. If something were to happen to Marquise Brown, something were to happen to Rashad Bateman, Tylan Wallace is someone that I do expect to at some point make an impact in this league. We're in the third round here. You're not getting an immediate impact player, but I love the player.
All right. That'll put you on the clock for the sixth pick in the third round. Yates, you're on the clock.
Yeah, this was, he fell to the sixth round of the NFL draft, but this is a player that I was really high on when I watched his tape, and then he lands in a spot that he has a path to be able to get on the field here pretty quickly. That's Daz Newsome, the wide receiver out of Chicago. The Bears have talked about Anthony Miller and potentially trading him, moving on. That opens up the slot role in this offense where Newsome can step in and be an immediate contributor in an offense that is now going to be captained by Justin Fields sooner rather than later. So let's go Daz Newsome here. I think that he fits this offense really well, and I think he can make an immediate impact.
All right, so Newsome with the pick there for Yates. That puts me on the clock here for the next pick. And you know what? All right, let's do it. It's a super flex. We'll take a shot. Maybe Tom Brady will retire sometime this decade. I don't know. We'll take a shot on Kyle Trask. Maybe he develops into something. Like, he had some good moments when he was surrounded by a lot of talent in Florida. There's no doubt about that. And appears to be a lot of talent in Tampa. Again, I don't think he sees the field for at least 2 years. But once again, super flex. I'll take the last quarterback of any sort of draft note on the board. And we'll move to tags next with the 8th pick.
I'm going to go, and again, this I could probably wait a little bit longer just because I know the opinion of Yates on him, but I'm going to take him here. I'm just going to take my guy, Cornell Powell, wide receiver out of Clemson, went to the Kansas City Chiefs, the top of the 5th round. It's a team that legitimately behind Tyreek Hill, I don't think people realize just how bad the depth chart is for Kansas City. Mecole Hardman is not someone that they're going to rely upon in a full-time role. I think we've learned that by now. You have Byron Pringle there. You have Demarcus Robinson. Demarcus Robinson should not even, he's a guy that shouldn't see the field. Really, I think he limits that offense in terms of what he offers. Powell, he flashed when he got a chances in 2020, with Trevor Lawrence. So going to Patrick Mahomes, a short depth chart. I believe this is an upside pick later in drafts.
All right, very good. Yates, you're up next. What's your pick?
Oh, you know what I'm going to do here? I am going to go and get my guy. I'm going to go Jalen Darden here at the 309. Do I think that Darden sees the field in year 1? Yes, as kind of a scheme touch player, like he can bring some spark here or there. But I think that this is more so about 2022 and saying that with Antonio Brown most likely not going to be back in town in 2022. They're facing some tough cap situations. And then, of course, Chris Godwin, he's on the franchise tag this year. What happens with him? You just don't know. And to the point where Darden has the draft capital where he could be a future starter in this offense in 2022. So I'm going to take the shot here on Darden. And if something does happen to Chris Godwin, God forbid this year, then I think Darden sees some playing time right away. So at the back end of the 3rd round, we're calling our shots. We're just taking our guys here, and I'll go with Darden.
That's where it gets a little crazy too. You just start throwing things and see what sticks here, and that's kind of where we're at. Oh my goodness! When we get into the 4th round, which is getting very close, it's right upon us here. We're at the 10th pick now in the 3rd round. I don't like the talent that's left here. Not a big fan of what's going on. So once again, it's just a matter of taking some guys that you've seen that you think talent-wise is good. And you know what? I'm going to take a running back here, take a shot on Chuba Hubbard, the Carolina Panthers. If indeed Christian McCaffrey does see injury time again, where are they going for running back? I don't know. It's kind of a mystery. Mike Davis is gone here, so their eggs are kind of all in this one basket that's CMC, and he's the phenomenal basket to put the eggs in, don't get me wrong. But at the same time, he did draft another running back, and I think it's just good for an insurance policy. And maybe just theoretically in Tag's world where, this is actually real and we've actually got rosters, I'm also a CMC owner, and I want to have a little bit of a backup plan. So that's why I'm making this pick.
All right, I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go with Dez Fitzpatrick, Tennessee wide receiver. He was someone that I wasn't particularly high on. Like Josh Palmer, I understood the reason he went higher. Fitzpatrick, I didn't watch him a whole lot, to be honest with you, because I didn't expect him to go until late in day 3. But Tennessee has a very, very shallow depth chart where it's easy to climb over Josh Reynolds, who is the definition of just a guy. So Dez Fitzpatrick, I think you have to like the opportunity he's going to get, because he's getting opportunity his rookie season, and if he flashes at all, it's going to seem like a steal here at the end of the 3rd round.
All right, that puts Yates on the clock to finish out the 3rd round with the 12th pick.
This was someone that I was actually kind of in on heading into the pre-draft process, and that was Larry Roundtree, the running back out of Missouri. Now, you look at the situation, he gets the 6th round draft capital, which is just a death sentence for running backs practically, but you look at the depth chart there in Los Angeles. You have Joshua Kelly, who has done nothing to prove that he can handle a significant workload. Justin Jackson is a guy who's shown flashes here or there, but he's more of that, you want to give him just a few touches here or there and let him kind of just be that spark plug for an offense rather than a pure workhorse running back. Well, you've got Austin Eckler there, but you need another running back in this system, and Larry Roundtree has the size and skill set to be able to succeed with his opportunities. So as far as a depth piece here that I can kind of just draft here at the back end of the 3rd round, literally the back end of the 3rd round, and see if he turns into something, to see if he wins this job. If he does, then I've got a starting running back for a dynamic offense. So Larry Roundtree in the back end of the 3rd round.
Look at that, Roundtree there. All right, so kicking up the 4th round now with the 1st pick, I'm going to take a running back here, and once again, just depth chart here. Javion Hawkins, Atlanta Falcons. I don't know what Mike Davis can do. He looked good last year at times, but I think this is kind of wide open, and an injury just like that could open up some spots there. So give me Hawkins here with the 1st pick in the 4th round. Tags, you're up next.
I just had this decision in our Fantasy Pros Invitational draft, and I was going back and forth because you have to factor in draft equity, but at the same time, if I don't have conviction in a player that he's ever going to make a fantasy impact, I can't take him. And it was the decision I had was between Tutu Atwell and someone I believed in that went undrafted. Someone that I believed in going undrafted was Cade Johnson, Seattle wide receiver. Again, another team that when they do pass the ball, it's extremely efficient, very, very shallow depth chart. I believe in the talent. I believe in the effort. I believe that if any team could rise him up the depth chart, it's Seattle, because Pete Carroll believes in players that actually give a damn and work to get there. So Cade Johnson, I will take over Tutu Atwell.
All right. So Tutu Atwell still floating around. Does Yates take the 2-2, or does he put on something else instead with the third pick in the fourth round?
Yeah, definitely not. I will hard pass on Tutu Atwell here in this draft period. So just spoiler.
Are one of us going to have to do it eventually in the fourth round? I feel like it might happen, but we'll see.
Spoiler alert, boys. You can have him. I will go here at the 403. I'll go with a running back that I liked coming out, and that is Elijah Mitchell. Now, he gets the lower draft capital, but we talked about the offense in San Francisco where they cycle through those backs. Jeff Wilson, Raheem Mostert has just not been able to stay healthy. You don't know if he's even going to be on this roster, really. You don't have that clarity. They take Elijah Mitchell in this draft, and I think that he fits this offense pretty well. So I will go with Elijah Mitchell here and just see what happens. Does he stick on this roster? If he does, he's got the chance to be, again, a kind of a fantasy relevant running back, which you're just not going to find typically in the fourth round.
No, you're typically not. Once again, we're kind of... the well's drying up, as they say. That's kind of where we're at. I'm going to take Ramondre Stevenson, running back, the New England Patriots. I know Tags hates him, but
I actually think this is the perfect spot for him. I was debating him here because in the fourth round, I mean, there's a chance that Bill Belichick says, "Oh, this guy is LeGarrette Blount."
That's why I keep saying it to you, and I know you're like, he's not as good as LeGarrette Blount. Maybe that's true.
It's a different game today, I think, but
it is a different game today. But I think Bill Belichick, no one's told him, and I think that's the difference. And I think he's going to try to bend the game to his will to a certain extent. And I can't tell him he can't do that because we've seen him do it time and time again. And I think this is a player that as the season goes on, the more you get Mac Jones, the more you see him play too. And the reason being, I think that's the guy at the goal line. That's the guy in the third and short. That's the guy that a little bit more physicality, bigger bodied guy that I think they're going to turn to, because when Cam Newton's not running the football anymore as the quarterback, you're going to lack some of that physicality and some of that. And I think that Stevenson could bring that to the Patriots offense in 2021. So again, I think here we are in the fourth round. It doesn't hurt anybody. And once again, Bill Belichick is probably going to find a way to work him in at some point, because we all know every running back gets a chance in New England some game, every single game. All right, so Tags, you're up next year with the next pick.
All right, well, if Tutu Atwell had gone to the Bears or the Texans or, Minnesota, anywhere else, I would not draft him. But the fact that he did get second-round draft capital and he's going to Sean McVay, if there's anybody that can make him work as a player, I guess it's McVay or like someone like Sean Payton. So I'm going to take Tutu Atwell here. I was torn in our actual draft between Cade Johnson and him, and I did go with Cade Johnson, so that's actually how I draft. But I was torn between the two because, again, you have to think about that second round equity. It's like, why? You don't know why they drafted him there. It doesn't make any sense. But, at some point you just say, I'm probably going to cut my fourth round pick in the end anyway. Let's just find out what they're going to do with him.
There you go. Probably getting cut. My favorite round of any draft. The guys who aren't going to make your team and you're not going to care about. All right, let's go on to the sixth pick in the fourth round here. Yates, you're on the clock.
I'll go with Amir Smith-Marset, wide receiver in Minnesota. Now, I actually kind of liked him coming out of Iowa. I thought that he showed some flashes here to the point where if he lands in this offense, when he landed in this offense, I had the immediate thought that he's the wide receiver 3 on this team. And what happens if Adam Thielen deals with his injury history yet again? And Thielen's coming up on the end of his career. What happens if they move on from Thielen next year? So I think at that point, Smith-Marset can step in as a starter in this offense. This is one of my favorite fourth-round picks that I'm making across my rookie draft. So Amir Smith-Marset here in the at the middle of the fourth round.
I'm slightly worried about DeAndre Swift in Detroit, not because he's not a great talent, but anytime you hear those concussion things start to bounce around, it's something to certainly take notice of with a player. And I know he was off to a very good second half before things kind of fell apart here with the injuries for him in 2020. So give me Jamar Jefferson, running back Detroit Lions here, just as a speculation pick, just in case. We saw them move on from Kerryon Johnson this week, so there's more opportunity now on that depth chart. So I'll see what Jefferson can bring here to that running back position for the Lions. That puts Tags on the clock for the 8th pick.
I'm going to go with another Seattle wide receiver because, again, I'm just chasing that upside at this point and finding out what I have there. Tamorrion Terry, a lot of analysts were high on him as a size speed type guy, and it could be like DK Metcalf's backup in terms of if Metcalf were to miss time. I could see him walk into that role. Again, I don't have high expectations here. I'm taking a player that's attached to an awesome offense with arguably a high ceiling.
All right. Yates, you're up with the 9th pick in the 4th round.
I'm going with a guy who is the highest available on my big board. That is Tommy Tremble, the tight end in Carolina. Now, I think that Tremble, you're going to draft him here at the back end of the 4th round, and you are going to be prepared that you're going to have to hold him on your roster for a couple of years. I think that he's someone who is going to have to take that Jonnu Smith type trajectory where he comes in, he's a blocking tight end to begin his career, he gets some touches here or there, but then in year 2, in year 3, he's going to be that guy who steps into a full-time role in this offense. So Tommy Tremble here back into the 4th round.
Oh my goodness, I'm just throwing out darts here at this point. So let's throw a dart, Sage Surratt of the Lions. Once again, lots of opportunity out there for wide receivers in Detroit this time of year. So we'll see what happens there, and that'll do it for me for picks. That puts up Tags for 11, Yates for 12, and we close out our rookie first-year Superflex draft. So Tags, Mr. Irrelevant for you.
I'll go with Marquez Stevenson, Buffalo wide receiver, field stretcher for Josh Allen. Use that big arm, hopefully grow and be a little bit more accurate down the field. They needed someone to stretch the field. They run a lot of 4 wide receiver sets, so Marquez Stevenson.
Yates, last pick of the 4th round. Do it.
This is someone who I'm actually surprised is still on the board. Now, I have him a little bit further down on my big board, but he got the 3rd round draft capital, and he landed in an offense that desperately needs speed at the wide receiver position. Anthony Schwartz here can run a 4.26 40-yard dash, can absolutely fly. Now, I have questions about where exactly his role in this offense is going to be. Is he going to even see the field in year 1? So that's the reason why he's still here in the back end of the 4th round. But Anthony Schwartz here, I'm going to lean on that draft capital. It's super important. I made that argument with Josh Palmer, and so to get Anthony Schwartz here in the back end of the 4th round, I feel like is good value.
May the Schwartz be with all of you in all of your rookie drafts this year. I actually considered Schwartz too, but I looked at the depth chart again at Cleveland. I'm just saying, I just don't know when he sees playing time.
He's a track star. That's all he is.
That was my kind of inclination too. So I just said, yeah, you know what? I think we're just gonna pivot around here. But look, in the 4th round, I think we've made things very clear. When you're looking at the 4th, it's about taking shots on situations, taking shots on a talent, and not worrying too much about it. As Tags kind of said, and I'll reiterate here, it's because sometimes these guys are not going to make your roster when all is said and done and make an impact in the NFL, and that's the sad, harsh truth and reality, which is why I always say when you can trade picks for proven NFL talent in Dynasty, always strongly consider that. Yates, any surprises here for you before we close out the show today?
Not really. I mean, once you get past, and Tags alluded to it, once you get past that, like the mid of the 2nd round, maybe late 2nd round, it is all about just the guys that you like. And there's no real consensus there, right? You have some players that you can follow ADP, to kind of give you a path, but outside of that, it really is just there's no reaches because all these guys have question marks surrounding them. So you take the guys who you think are going to have that immediate opportunity to succeed and to get to prove themselves, and then that helps them stick, or then you can sell them off in Dynasty. So, but yeah, it really is just all about the guys that you like there in the 3rd and 4th rounds.
Tags, as good as the talent is in the 1st and 2nd round, it's as questionable it is in the 3rd and 4th. Any takeaways here from this exercise today?
No, I think Yates hit it on the head there. I don't think people realize just how not productive 2nd round rookie picks are in Dynasty. I mean, in Superflex it helps because it pushes some first rounders out to the 2nd round. So I would say basically the top half of the 2nd round. Once you get again to that mid to the back end of the 2nd round, you're taking shots on players that you believe in. Because again, you can't hesitate to cut some of these players because I've done studies on this. The articles are up on FantasyPros. It is what is a rookie Dynasty draft pick worth, and I legitimately have, I think, 13 years of data now that I've sifted through and gone through, and I basically tell you what to expect out of those picks. So again, once you get into the 2nd round, I don't think people realize the hit rate and how low it is. There's always going to be outliers, but in the end, you have to live with who you pick, and this is fun.
All right. I want to thank our sponsor of today's show, RT Sports. Go to rtsports.com and use that code PROS to get involved, and they'll match that 20% deposit. It's best ball season. It has begun. The schedule comes out next week. We'll be talking about it's the perfect time to get into some best ball and get the juices flowing for draft season this summer. And I want to thank our other sponsor of today's show, which is sheathunderwear.com. Again, head over to sheathunderwear.com/fantasypros. That's SHEATH underwear.com/fantasypros and get 20% off. And I'll tell you what, your sack will thank you for the sheath. And again, support our military here, because this is created by somebody here who was a former soldier, and very cool to be starting his own business here with Sheath Underwear. So go out and check out the product. It's a very quality product too. I endorse this Joe and the Joey, all the Joes support it. Also, don't forget about our giveaway here at fantasypros.com/contest. We've got that incredible jersey giveaway. It's Calvin Ridley. It's for you. Again, go to fantasypros.com/contest and you can get that Calvin Ridley autographed jersey. All you got to do, submit a review of the show that you take on Apple Podcasts or on CastBox. Upload that bad boy. Fill out the paperwork there on the site. 2 seconds, just like that. A Calvin Ridley jersey can be yours, thanks to pristineauction.com. All right, that'll do it for us today, but the story of the game goes on. For Tags and Yates, I'm Joey P. We'll see you next time, kids.
Thanks for tuning in to the Fantasy Pros YouTube channel. Don't forget to check out our featured videos. And while you're at it, make sure to follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at Fantasy Pros, so you can get the latest news and updates to give you the edge you need in your fantasy league.